The views and opinions expressed by guests on the TWBC podcast are solely those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of, nor constitute an endorsement by the host, TWBC, or the advertisers.
National championships, Confederation championships, World championships, major professional events. For over 3 decades, he has been there for many of the sport's greatest moments. And now he brings you even closer to the movers and shakers in the world of high-echelon tournament water skiing. From the founder and creator of the Water Ski Broadcasting Company comes the TWBC Podcast. And now here's your host, Tony Lightfoot.
Well, greetings one and all. My name is the aforementioned Tony Lightfoot, and this is another episode of the TWBC podcast, coming to you from the King of Darkness, taking place in Winter Garden. And another special guest has joined me up here in the Crow's Nest. Her name is Karen Truelove. How you doing, Karen?
Doing great today, Tony.
I'm especially pleased to have you here to talk about water skiing in general and your accomplishments and all that kind of stuff, and your relationship with one of the greatest jumpers of all time. But we'll touch upon that all within the scope of this podcast. But first off, so Karen Truelove, you're certainly one of the most consistent women slalom skiers of all time, you know, on the professional level and that kind of stuff. But how have you been skiing recently?
Recently, I mean, we always want more, I guess, than what's actually happening at the current time. I guess I'm kind of just in a different phase of my life right now with the kids growing up and just getting a little bit more involved in, other aspects of life. So I'm I'd say like my performances aren't where I want them to be right now, but the cool thing I think is that I'm learning more about myself and the sport than I have in years past. And so I mean, it's something that I've always felt like was a little bit of a goal of mine, was to try to learn more about like the technical side of things. So yeah, I mean, I'm kind of almost being forced in a certain way, I guess, to learn a little bit more than I've known. So it's a good thing. It's a little bit, I guess, bittersweet at times because we always want to, have those really high performances. But I feel like it'll pay off, in the future. Trying to be a little bit more efficient I think is what you're trying to say a little bit. Yeah. Just had, it's been, after kind of having the kids and life getting a little bit more full, I guess it's, trying to kind of find, a good balance for me. And over my career, there's been, a substantial amount of changes within the sport, technology-wise and things. So it was always, kind of always having to adapt to what's coming at you. And so, I'm kind of at one of those little areas again. All right, then. You mentioned the kids a little bit, and we'll touch upon them in just a moment. But I mean, you mentioned the changes in the sport because I mean, when we first saw each other, it was probably at somewhere at Coble Ski School or at Bennett's or that kind of stuff. And back in those days, it was like hand-driven type stuff, and kind of get. In those situations is you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, But today the technology has moved along. The best drivers in the sport, their nuances behind the wheel have been, from their hand driving have been replicated into zero off and that kind of thing. But do you see that as being the major technical achievement within the sport that's really brought the game up? In that way? Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I think, I would say looking back, I didn't really, man-made lakes weren't really something, there's only a few man-made lakes out there when I was coming along. And then now, we rarely ski on lakes that aren't man-made. So It's kind of flipped. So yeah, absolutely. Like, just the conditions are more controlled, if you will. I know we can't control the weather, but the conditions are more controlled, and then just having the consistency of, the speed control and, the boats have been improved on and the driving. It's just so many more things are more consistent these days. And it gives you an opportunity to really dial in. You can kind of depend on that consistency to sort of navigate your way through, and you sort of know, okay, well, I definitely had the same driver, had so many of the same conditions, so you can really start zeroing in on what you need to be working on. Whereas, like you said before, it used to just be such a shot in the dark as to what was going on. We just didn't know. I don't know if ignorance is bliss is the right phrase to use right now, but we just didn't know. We didn't know that the driving made such a big difference, and the ropes make such a big difference, and conditions and buoy size, and there's quite a long list.
Whole bunch of variables there, for where you come from originally, North Carolina, y'all had the fortune of having some really good drivers up there, like the likes of Tommy Harrington, who driven at Trophy Lakes and all of those great sites. And you started out in the Raleigh-Durham area, didn't you, with skiing against the likes of April Coble and that kind of stuff, but you were rather fortunate to have someone to ski against, to kind of train you up and be really, really competitive, in your infancy up there.
Yes, absolutely. If it wasn't for April and then Tammy Hargis, I had two girls that we were all really similar in age, and if it wasn't for being in those conditions, kind of having that environment, I don't think I know I wouldn't be where I am today. It makes such a difference. I see it in my kids. I actually see it in my skiing now. It's so much nicer when you kind of have somebody who is similar in kind of skill level, and you can train with and sort of bounce things off of, and kind of give you that push, because it's always nice to have a little. We're mostly self-motivated, but it's nice to have that extra little push and see what's out there. But yeah, I was very fortunate. Grew up in North Carolina. We had, I was around a lot of people that had a level of curiosity and desire and drive to want to make things better, and they wanted to gain knowledge, and they were willing to share. So it was just. It was a great environment, very competitive environment, and I think we still see it 20, 30 years later.
Yes, indeed, and it was that competitive environment that allowed you and April Coble, Ella, to flourish, ski on the world teams in the junior level. I think you went to Italy and to Canada and all those places. How much of a life-changing experience was that for you in the junior level?
I guess it just shows you, I grew up in a little small town, and, you played normal sports, I guess you call it, like basketball and, volleyball, football, and, to be able to have the opportunity to get out and see the world and know that there's kind of a whole big world out there, another way to live, and, different people with different cultures. It was exposure that I couldn't have gotten, just doing more traditional sports. So, I think it just kind of gave me a desire to want to seek out, something, a little bit outside the norm. And, it was so valuable. Very thankful for the experience.
All right, continuing our little trip down memory lane, because in terms of collegiate water skiing, both you and April, through your transfer from NLU to UNC, established what is... What is known in certain circles as the Truelove Coble rule now, which means that you kind of have to take a red shirt if you transfer from one school to the other. Tell us a little bit about how you feel you impacted collegiate water skiing in that regard.
At the time, that was not like our intention at all, was to stir things up. We were, we both had, we're attending Chapel Hill together, and April actually had started dating a guy named Brian Swenson, and so she was looking at going there, and going and skiing at a college on a scholarship. That was, it was being done, but it was still a bit of, it was still a bit unheard of, still unusual. So, my seasons were fairly short, in North Carolina. So the idea of being able to go and kind of ski and be in that environment was appealing to me, just to have the experience for one semester. And it turned out that it happened to be the fall semester, which was when they had collegiate nationals. So yeah, we didn't know what we were stirring up there, but apparently there's a April and Karen rule that was established, you know.
Indeed.
Because of that.
Yeah, and funnily enough, it's your little stint at NLU, okay, which is now ULM now, the Warhawks. Yes. Yeah, you were the Indians back then, you know, so we've got going down a little bit of NCWSA history. But that little stint there was the genesis of probably one of the greatest power couples in all of tournament water skiing. Care to expand upon that, Karen?
Yeah, I mean, it changed my life. I mean, I had no idea, that decision, would be such a, big decision. Going there, I can't even remember. I think I met Freddy somewhere along the way, like maybe at a nationals or something. We were just friends. We happened to live across the street. Our dorms faced each other, and we just got to know each other. I was not really looking to pursue I guess I thought I was going to be a professional skier along with having like a profession. Whereas in talking with him, all he wanted to do was be a professional skier, and he had a very strong desire to do so. But it's kind of ironic because, I had already been on the pro tour and, had never heard of this guy, Freddy Krueger. So when he was talking to me, I was like, oh, this guy's, he's ambitious, But we just developed a friendship at that time, and then kind of parted ways. I went back to North Carolina. He went to LSU, and then we kind of picked up our friendship, through the next semester, and then kind of realized that both of us wanted more, and started dating that next summer.
Wow. Yep, and obviously to this day, I mean that friendship, that relationship, continues on. I mean, in a recent Facebook post, I mean, Freddy, he doesn't talk very often. He doesn't, he keeps his heart very much to his sleeve. In a lot of his communications online, we don't hear from him too much. But in a recent post, I mean, he in no uncertain terms said that if it wasn't for you being there, encouraging him along and giving him the pointers, he wouldn't be where he is right now, being the winner of the Masters Jump title and having claimed Masters Jump title in each of the last 4 decades. I mean, come on, tell us a little bit.
Quite a compliment, yeah. I mean, I feel like. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I look back on it and I'm like, where's the last 20 years gone? So sometimes it's all kind of been a blur. We've both kind of had our heads down and taken each season, as it comes, and tried to make the best of what was ahead of us. So, I mean, I think what you see of Freddy, is what I see of Freddy. I mean, what you see is what you get. He's very detail oriented and determined, and he just has a level of focus that you just don't see very often. So, he's a easy student, I guess, if you want to call me the coach and him the student. I just feel like honestly, he's actually kind of taught me along the way how to coach him, if you will. So, when we first were together, I mean, I didn't know anything about jumping. I didn't know what I was doing, and he, his dad was a teacher, so he kind of has that gift, to do that. So over the years, he's just kind of told me, hey, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want, and I guess over that time, I've kind of learned to be a good coach for him. So we work well together, and I believe in him with all my heart and soul. So I think that just kind of shows through when the times get tough, if you will. So we dig deep when we need to.
Excellent stuff. And before we bring the podcast to a close, we would be remiss without touching upon the kids, Ridge and Dash, because I mean, you're coaching them, you're encouraging them along as being parents of tournament water skiers, having the status that you have, at the high echelon level. I mean, how careful are you in managing what Dash and Ridge do out there on the water, so far as coaching in performance-wise, to where they don't burn out like so many kids often do in sports of this type?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. We're kind of going along, taking each day as it comes with that as well. So, as their personalities kind of and desire kind of develops, we're sort of we're responding to that, I guess. They're getting more determined to want to get more involved in skiing. Kind of what you touched on earlier, with me having the relationship that I had in North Carolina with, April and Tammy. They're seeing that with the other kids. So it's, I think that's so valuable to kind of get out there and, have the exposure and, the encouragement and the just little competition goes a long way. So, I think it's just, with the pandemic and everything kind of shutting down, I think we all, Freddie and I both were like, wow, this is, the kids can still ski. Like they aren't able to do the other things they were kind of involved in, but they can still ski. So, that kind of gave us some valuable time on the water. And, they've just kind of started falling in love with the sport, like we all have.
Excellent stuff. So we'll wrap it up around about there. But any thanks, any shout outs you'd like to give to in nearest and dearest?
I have to say thank you to my family and, my everybody back in North Carolina, and, Mastercraft has been there from the beginning, and, we just, wouldn't be able to keep moving forward without Mastercraft. So just big shout out to those guys, and, looking forward to the tournaments and, coming up later in the year. We've got some, the calendar's getting a little bit full here, which is great, and got the Mastercraft Pro and Worlds and stuff. So looking for it to close out with a bang.
All right, you've been listening to Karen Truelove here on the TWBC podcast. My name's Tony Lightfoot. Great to have you, and thank you for participating. And that's it for this episode. Be sure to join us for the next episode. But until then, it is ciao for now.
Thank you for listening to the TWBC podcast. Be sure to check out our website at waterskibroadcasting.com. Links to our presence on major social media platforms can be found there, as well as updates to our webcast and this podcast. Duplication or rebroadcasting of this broadcast without written consent of TWBC is prohibited. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to join us next time for the next edition of the TWBC podcast.